New changes are coming to Diablo 4. New world tiers, squished numbers, different drop rate, new boss summoning cost, new gems, new progression. A lot of these changes seem and feel good, but there are some that might be troublesome to casual players and raise my concerns. To fully test PTR changes, I decided not using the boost from PTR vendor or my gear from Season 5. Unfortunately, I already had a huge amount of gold, crafting and boss summoning materials due to the fact that all my characters were implemented to PTR version of Diablo, but still I wanted the progress to be as organic as possible. I decided to play a sorceress and go for a firewall build, which within current state of D4 I reached World Tier 4 without a problem and hit level 90, so I was curious how it would manage with the current changes. The Penitent level is locked until the character reaches level 50, so I started the game on Expert level, which is unlocked by completing the story prologue. The beginnings were difficult but satisfying. Finally, I could feel Helltide meteors dealt some serious damage, and I couldn't ignore them, just like the damage dealt by Helltide commanders. Leveling was relatively quick, although the small loot drop rate was noticeable. Overall, the fact that we don't have loot piñatas anymore in the game now has its pros and cons, but we will get to that later. I did my first Nightmare dungeon, and despite the fact that masterworking material starts to drop from Torment 1, it was an enjoyable experience, and I felt that it doesn't matter where you level. Monsters have a difficulty level adjusted to the difficulty level of the world, so it doesn't matter if you run around the open world, do Helltide or dungeons, you have a choice of where you want to level your character. Only around level 30 was my character fully equipped with legendary items. I think this is a positive change. There is no more issue with overfilled inventory. Item drops are similar to those in Diablo 2. Each orange item can be important, and the fact that these are rare items, combined with the fact that gear stats had been squished, makes each upgrade meaningful, or at least until we hit level 60. Yellow and blue items still drop on higher difficulty levels like Torment 3 or 4, which is not good, and I hope devs will find a purpose for these items in the future. After about 5 hours of gameplay, I reached level 50 and changed the difficulty from Expert to Penitent. Unfortunately, the difference between these two difficulties was not very noticeable. Penitent is like our current T3, which you are only on for a moment. We unlock it at level 50, level the character to level 60, and then immediately finish Pit 20, which shouldn't be a problem, and jump into Torment 1. Penitent currently seems like an artificial and unnecessary level of difficulty, and it wouldn't be nothing wrong to get rid of it. It took me about 6 hours to level my character up to level 60, and it was a pleasant experience. Getting Paragon points though is a different story. Since Paragon points are now shared across the realm, the moment I reached level 60 I immediately received 225 Paragon points, which I spent gradually and didn't spend them all until late game on Torment 1. The grind for 300 Paragon points is comparable to leveling your character to level 100 on Season 1, if you remember that, and it's a snooze fest. In the end, I didn't max out the Paragon points, and I wonder how fast it will be to get those points to 225, because if it's just as slow, I bet people won't be happy. I understand the last points are supposed to resemble the final character progression like in Diablo 2, where you can, but you don't have to level up to level 99, but I don't know if everyone will like this change, especially since on Torment 4 difficulty, we lack the resistances and armor that we can get from Paragon nodes, and let's be real, not everyone will have Shaco or Tyrael's Might. What deserves praise is the fact that bosses in the pit are adapted to the level of difficulty just like other monsters, which means we no longer have a situation when we blast through the pit and then sit for 5 minutes killing the boss. After finishing Pit 20, I unlocked and changed difficulty to Torment 1, where dungeons with bosses and Lilith appeared on the map. And Obdusites start to drop in Nightmare dungeons, which is currently upgrade material for the masterworking. Ingolith and Nevior cease to exist. Without any special exploration, without events, cursed shrines or chests, after completing the dungeon on Torment 1, I got 160 Obducite. The higher the level of Torment, the more of Obducite we'll get from Nightmare dungeons. Obducite drops from boss, elites and events, so it's worth exploring dungeons now, and I must admit completing dungeons finally has become quite enjoyable. Leveling glyphs in a pit is extremely simple and fast, and similar to leveling gems in a Greater Rifts in Diablo 3. If the pit level is at least 10 levels higher than the glyph level, the chance of leveling is 100%. There is new gem quality in game, Grand Gems, which are extremely expensive. Because all my materials and gold from Eternal were imported to PTR, I could afford it, but I wonder how hard it will be to obtain these gems when new season begins and we'll have to start from scratch. I guess time will tell. After finishing Pit 35, I unlocked and move on to Torment 2. And that's where the problem started. While I was having a great time up until that point, this is where some questions and concerns emerged. I didn't get a single ancestral item during the entire Torment 1. Current ancestral items are always guaranteed to have at least one greater affix and are the only items in the game that can be tempered twice and masterworked up to 12 times. This also applies to uniques, meaning that if your unique item isn't an ancestral item, you won't upgrade it up to 12 times, but only 4. Additionally, I started to think about the issue of acquiring unique items. I started to hit the wall on Torment 1 and decided to change my build towards Firebolt, but for that I needed unique gloves. Currently, this is no problem in Diablo 4. We can target farm uniques by killing bosses such as Grigor or Zir, but with the new loot drop rate, there are so few of them that this problem also affects these bosses, and what is worse, summoning a boss costs exactly the same at each level of Torment. And while I understand the higher level of Torment, the more uniques drop, I am not in favor of summoning cost being the same. Varshan on Torment 1 costs 4 hearts and drops 1 unique. Varshan on Torment 3 costs 4 hearts and drops 3 uniques. The current cost of bosses, regardless the Torment level, is Varshan 4 hearts, Grigor 12 steel, Zir 12 blood, Ice Beast 12 fear, Duriel 2x and 2 shards, Andariel 2 shackles and 2 dolls. After finishing Pit 50 and unlocking Torment 3 on a very chaotic Firebolt Lightning Spear build, I decided to see how challenging Lilith is on Torment 1 and 2. And in my opinion, Uber Lilith is not so uber anymore. I'm not sure if this is a good change because Lilith was supposed to be a challenge. She's come a long way since pre-season times, and as a person who defeated her in every season, counting since the first one when she had implemented one-shot mechanics, I am not sure if current changes are 100% fair. I get my achievement and horse for defeating her after hours of trying and learning her movement, and although it was annoying in its own way, it was also satisfying. Currently, Uber Lilith is a joke, and it's the unfunny one. At that point, after just getting on Torment 3, I was too weak and above all too slow to kill her on Torment 3, although it's quite funny that she herself couldn't kill me with one shot while Zir on Torment 3 could. I finished Nightmare Dungeon on Torment 3 and got 470 Obducite. So that's a big difference compared to the 160 pieces I got on Torment 1. And since I wasn't able to kill Zir on Torment 3, I went back to Torment 2 where I farmed Fracture Wintergrass Amulet and changed my build to Lightning Spear. Since we only got access to the runes from Friday, they started dropping quite late in my game, so I don't know how often they drop somewhere in the world while leveling up to level 60. Most often, runes dropped from bosses like Varshan and final bosses in the pit. Remember that rune and rune wards will only be available with the expansion. I created my first rune ward between the fights with Andariel and immediately felt the difference. So far I think rune wards are quite interesting and easy to understand. Unlike in Diablo 2, you can make mistakes because runes can be taken out from the gear just like gems. Their effect and charging can be seen above the skill bar. I completed Pit 65, first unlocking Torment 4, and then started leveling up glyphs. These are all glyphs I managed to level during a few days of gameplay. Some of them are the ones I used in previous builds, so as you can see, leveling glyphs is really fast now. Up until Torment 4, I had no problem with finishing Pit of 20 levels more than the level of my glyphs, so the success chance was always 100%. Getting all glyphs to legendary level, which is 46, is not a difficult achievement. Currently, because the number of Paragon boards has been limited to 5, counting with the starting one, you can use only 5 glyphs. It definitely allows you to focus more on all rare and magic nodes, choose those boards that have interesting legendary node, and in the later stages of the game also choose those nodes that provides us with additional life, armor or resistances. And I'm saying this from the perspective of a person who doesn't play Ubers, currently known as Mythics, and has farmed all the gear in the game, not using old items from before the changes, which are now referred as Legacy. Here you can see my stats and the build I ended up playing. This is a slightly modified version of Dan the Crown Lightning Spear Sorceress, and of course I leave a link to his build in the description. There are many positives from the current changes, and I will tell you about many smaller changes and quality of life in my next video, but I see a few problems that need to be talked about, such as yellow items and blue items dropping on higher difficulties, unnecessary penitent level, boss summoning cost the same on all torment levels, very slow paragon progression, very low drops of uniques, and extremely low drops of ancestral items, which makes breaking them even more painful than before. I am a bit disappointed with the difficulty levels. I thought normal level would be like the current T1, hard like something between T2 and T3, expert between T3 and T4, penitent like the current T4 plus 10 levels, and the Torment 1 like mobs level 130, Torment 2 150, Torment 3 180, and finally Torment 4 like mob level 200. Of course, it would make it so that not everyone would reach Torment 4, but they wouldn't have to. It would be enough if the seasonal journals stopped at quests on Penitent or Torment 1 level. I think most people in the game currently have no problem using free Profane Mind Cages on Helltide or finishing Nightmare Dungeons level 76 where the monsters have level 130. And although my overall experience is good, in the current state of the game on PTR, I have the impression the difficulty levels of the game not feel 100% right and have their problems, such as why Lilith cannot one-shot me on Torment 3 while Zir could. In addition, since the bosses on Torment 1 only drop one unique item and the cost of their summoning is the same as on higher difficulty levels where they drop more of these uniques, I have the impression the game somehow is forcing me to move to higher difficulty levels. But in the same time, the game also does not particularly reward us for choosing a higher level of Torment, because as soon as we hit level 60 on our character, all legendaries have item power of 750, regardless of whenever you are on Torment 1 or 4, all items have exactly the same stats and only ancestral items are better and have item power of 800, but their quality also does not differ between Torment 1 and 4. The difference is only the frequency of the drop rate, which is supposed to be higher on higher Torment levels, but they are still rare on Torment 4. On the one hand, I see many good changes, on the other hand, problems that have not disappeared, but have only changed their flavor. Of course, this is only PTR and many things can still change by October. Let me know what is your opinion whenever you have tested the game on PTR and what your impressions are. Leave a like and expect another video from the PTR with other changes that are coming to Diablo 4. Take care!